Good morning from Dubai. Welcome to how alliancing and collaboration can transform project delivery in the GCC. This is a special webinar looking at how we can improve the way projects are delivered across the region. And today's webinar is brought to you by SNC-Lavalin in partnership with MEED. My name is Richard Thompson. I am the editorial director of MEED, and I will be your moderator for today. My job is to hopefully manage a smooth conversation that brings out many of these important points and hopefully helps you to engage with these with the panel of experts that we have today and with each other on how we can rethink the way projects are delivered in the region. It is a live broadcast. You can submit your questions using the tab that says stage on the right hand side of your screen, and I will try and moderate those questions and put them to the panelists, and also your points and observations as well, so that will help the conversation flow. It is a 90-minute session split into two parts. The first part of today's broadcast will be a 1-hour panel discussion, and I will introduce our wonderful panel of speakers in just a second. And once the panel is concluded, after about 1 hour, we will move into a networking session. And you can all join the networking session after the panel by using the tabs on the left-hand side of your screen. There is one tab that says group networking, which allows everybody to talk together in a large group session. Or there is a second button that says speed networking, and that enables a randomized face-to-face networking session for anyone attending today. But the main element of today's discussion is the panel. Now, the topic, as I mentioned, is about how we can rethink project delivery in the GCC, and specifically looking at collaborative forms of contracting and alliancing models for project delivery. Across the region, both public sector and private sector clients are under increasing pressure, whether it's from the impact of COVID, whether it's the lower oil prices, or whether it's just tighter fiscal management from ministries of finance. There is increasing pressure on clients to get higher value from their project investments. And one of the main areas where we can increase value is by delivering projects more efficiently, with lower levels of waste, and more collaboratively. So today we want to discuss how can we do that? How can we transform project delivery in the GCC to increase the value that investors and clients get from their projects, but also to improve the business model for everyone involved in the projects market? So we will be looking at issues such as what are the challenges today that we face? How is the projects industry in the GCC today? How can collaborative models move the dial in terms of improving project delivery, and how indeed can we set up alliancing structures and collaborative models, and what are the roles of the different stakeholders in doing that? So a lot of detail to cover today, and we have a wonderful panel which I will introduce now before we start. We're delighted to have two fantastic representatives from the client side of the projects industry. From Saudi Arabia, I'm delighted we have Faisal Butt with us. Faisal is the Project Delivery Director from Red Sea Development Company. Now, this is one of, if not the most important project currently underway in Saudi Arabia. It's really spearheading the sort of the Vision 2030 generation of giga projects, and we've seen incredible progress on that project over the past 12 months. And I'm delighted that Faisal has been able to join us today to tell us about that project and his view of how we can improve project delivery. From Abu Dhabi, I'm also delighted that we have Raymond Hector with us. Now, Raymond is the Director of Commercial Contracts at Aldar Properties. Aldar is one of the best known real estate developers in the region. It's behind many fantastic developments in Abu Dhabi, and has pioneered many innovative ways of delivering projects and contract models over the past few years. So thank you, Raymond, for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views on project delivery. Representing the contractor side of the industry, We have Sean Mchugh, who is the Operations Director at ALEC. Now, I'm sure everybody knows ALEC, one of the best known main contractors in the region, based in the UAE, and very prominent player in the UAE market. And ALEC, Sean will bring a wealth of knowledge about the state of the market today from a contractor's perspective, but also what is the role of contractors in reshaping the industry going forward. And last but certainly not least, from our host today, Paula Bosch is the Managing Director for the GCC, excluding the UAE and Saudi, for Atkins, which is one of the world's best known multidisciplinary engineering consultancies and part of the SNC-Lavalin group. Paul has decades of experience in this region and around the world in multiple sectors. I mean, it's an incredible CV, and I know from the preparatory calls that Paul has a very clear vision for the way forward for project. So welcome to all four of you. Thank you very much for your time and giving us your expertise today. So I'm going to start, Raymond, with you. I'd like to start with the client perspective, and I'll come to you first, Raymond, and then Faisal after you. So from your perspective, Raymond, and from the Aldar Properties perspective as a client, what is your view on how well we deliver projects today in the GCC, and how do you feel we can change the dial to reduce waste and improve project delivery?
Hi, Richard. Good morning and welcome to fellow gentlemen and a wider audience. Look, as a major developer in Abu Dhabi, we've got, a very vast portfolio approach that we've been delivering, as you rightly mentioned, over the last 15 years or so. And we've been able to do that largely, by the way how we work, the partners that we work with, the consultants and contractors. But look, we know when we understand the traditional method of procuring and delivering projects, it's not really been working as optimal as it should be. And, largely that's for a number of reasons. It's easy to say it's the contractors or the consultants or whatever, but the three primary stakeholders in delivering any real estate development. You normally have a developer, the owner. We then engage with consultants to, design the aspiration of the projects, and then we appoint a contractor to deliver. Now, projects in their nature, they take time to deliver. Things do change over time, and then when things do change, people then start resolving to pointing fingers and blaming each other. And when you approach a project in that way, you don't really get the desired results. And so we see key things around with causing that lack of desired delivery, which is things like lack of trust, misalignment of objectives, protectionism. Recent times we've also been going with some of the other contractors. We have talked about low margins and the likes. And when you have an environment like that, and then you've got the competitive nature about it. Every project that you do, you always go out to tender, be it with the consultants and the contractors, and there are elements of competition in that. And so when you have competition, it doesn't really aid for a collaborative environment to work in. And then again, as I say, when you mention things like tight margins, it doesn't lead to the desired results. And the big thing which is important for us here at Aldar as well, is innovation and sustainability. And those things are difficult to interject in the current market as it is. So really, us as a developer and way forward, we're really looking for new and innovative ways to do things. And we kind of see alliance contracting as being a key to enable us to do just that.
So thank you for that, Raymond. Now, Aldar has played a role in trying to innovate project delivery in the past. I think it was it the Al Raha Beach project where you introduced a partnering concept. So, what lessons can you pass on from that experience in actually trying to sort of transform an established culture in terms of project procurement and delivery?
We see the lessons to be transformed. Like I said, that's the primary thing in any partnership or collaboration. It's essentially trust, and go back to the point of aligned objectives. And that partnership back then, it was a true sort of partnership. It was almost like a JV, if you like. And so everyone bought into the whole thing, was able to deliver. If you remember back at the time, there was an incredible amount of real estate that was delivered at the time, which really sets the standard for the region at the time. And so, going back to it, key is trust and innovation. The way we delivered it, there was a lot of off-site construction at the time and prefabrications that would enabled us to deliver a significant real estate in a record time.
And is it your sense that something has changed in the market? Obviously 2020 has been a very tough year for everybody because of COVID and the impact on the economy. But obviously in this part of the world, over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, we've seen lower oil prices, and that's put pressure on government spending at least. Do you sense, whether this is personally or as Aldar, that there is a change, the need for reducing waste and increasing efficiency has now overridden or overtaken the need to get the lowest price contract that you can?
Well, see, the lowest price is as a private company. We are a for-profit company, so competitiveness is important to us. But competitiveness cannot come at the expense of quality. It cannot come at the expense of workers' welfare, and it cannot come at the expense of sustainability. These things are fundamental to us. You would have been seen in the press recently. We've launched our RCB program, we've launched our workers' welfare and sustainability. So those things are always very much important to us and always be at the forefront, and they never come at the expense of price. And so it's always a matter of finding a happy medium and a good balance. We see all partners, or vendors as partners effectively. So we know everyone's in business to make money. That's just what it is. And so we feel that consultants, contractors are able to deliver when they're contracted on a price that they feel comfortable with on fair and balanced terms. And so over the last few years, we would have all harmonized our contract terms. And in fact, we've just done a survey recently where we've got an 85% success ratings, where we've been saying that our contract terms are fair and balanced. And then on the price, we do believe that we pay a good price for the product and services that we do ask for, and consultants and contractors have been delivering for us on that side. And and again, one of the things that we're pushing in is the sustainability. Some people see this as a price premium, but we don't see it in that way, because when you go at it in the right way and you implement these things early on in the contract in the design phase, and then throughout the construction, it doesn't really come as a premium. And then you deliver a quality product that the market needs and wants, and they pay for it at a good price. And so we see it as a fairly balanced and overall.
Okay, thank you. Now, for anyone watching, I'm sure everyone who's joining us today has a keen interest in this topic. If you have questions for Raymond or any of our panelists, please use the stage tab on the right-hand side to submit your questions, and I will do my best to put them to the panelists. We already have one question that has come in for you, Raymond. I'll put this to you now, but we could maybe, we don't want to take up too much time before we go to the other panelists. But the questioner has asked, why has the alliancing approach used on Raha Beach not been replicated since? Now, that's quite an interesting question. I don't know enough detail myself about that, but is that because the market changed and so the priorities changed, or did it not quite work as hoped? What's your thought? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I mean, the alliance or collaborative contract takes many different forms. They're pure alliances, and then they're innovative ways to doing it. Here in the region, we've been used to doing things in a traditional way. We used to do for the contract, we do a design, bid, and build scenario. Alliancing really works and have great value for large, complex infrastructure projects when you're trying to deliver, a vast amount of real estate in a short period of time, or a project with significant complexity. The Raha Beach project was, that was a different thing. That was, effectively creating a whole new, neighborhood and area within a short period of time. So that was right for that period of time. Now, moving on from that, again, as Aldar likes to say, we work with a number of contractors and consultants on a repeated basis, and that's kind of alliance and collaboration in an informal way, if you like, and that's just stemmed from the quality of work that we get from both the consultants and the contractors, and so we see in that sense. So these are some of the reasons why you may not see it in a formal sense, because when you establish a good working relationship with the supply chain, it doesn't necessarily need to have a formal contract labeling something as alliance for it to work. And so this is what I would say about that. But generally, in the region, for Alliance to really work, like I said, the key premise for Alliance to work is trust and aligned goals and objectives. When you have a client going off and then engage in a consultant to design a project and then engage the contractor much later on, then you tend to lose the benefit. You miss the boat effectively on getting that collaboration and your early involvement up front. And so these are the challenges why it hasn't really been adopted in the region per se, but that doesn't stop it from working going forward. And we're now looking at ways in how we can do that. And again, to allow us to continue to be sustainable, to allow us to continue to be innovative, to allow us to be able to deliver quality products to the market in a time that's right and at the right price point, then we need to redefine these ways to be able to do that.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Raymond. I'll move on to the other panelists for a moment, but if anyone has questions for Raymond, please use the stage tab on the right-hand side. Faisal, if I can come to you, thank you again for joining us today. It's great to have the Red Sea Development Company as part of this discussion, because your project really is the sort of blazing a trail for the next generation of projects across Saudi Arabia. And I'm guessing that because you're all part of the kind of the Vision 2030 ecosystem, if you like, that a lot of what you do, a lot of the lessons from the Red Sea project may well permeate through the other projects, NEOM and Qiddiya and all of these ones. So tell us a little bit, Faisal, about maybe if you can just tell us a little bit where the Red Sea project is at the moment in terms of procurement, and how you feel about the current way the projects are delivered. Is it adequate for your needs? And how would you like to sort of improve it?
Well, thanks, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here, and hello, everyone. Good morning, Fair from Riyadh. Yeah, so we operate in a challenging environment, right? So we are operating in a remote location, right? The west coast of Saudi Arabia, between the city of Al-Waj and Mchugh, where essentially there is no development in the project zone. And we also operate in a very environmentally sensitive area as well. So we need to respect that factor, which is very important to how we develop and how we deliver these projects. So project started about 3 years ago when the initial vision was put together. Over the course of the next following years, we finished our master plan, got our master plans approved by our board. And right now, this year, we've actually procured up to 4 billion approximately in contracts. So some major contracts awarded this year, and we will continue to do that next year as well. But I think for us, the challenge has been, to a certain extent, the maturity of the market. Delivering projects in this time scale we're trying to deliver, the designs and the aspirations of the design we're trying to deliver, and the quality we're trying to deliver, you need to think outside the box of how do you construct your delivery models, how you put your contracts together, and how you collaborate with the market. Initially, it was always a challenge because what our job was also deliver the projects, but also teach the market here of how we see delivery. But I think those were initial challenges around contractor engagement. There was not enough contractor engagement, early contractor engagement in this market. Historically speaking, UAE is a different market, much more mature. The design management capabilities of the contractor was not as sophisticated. And on top of that, our delivery model is design management and construction management. So we firmly believe that in order to deliver the design, deliver the quality, and mitigate the schedule risks that we know we're going to face, that was the best approach to do. So we needed to almost rethink the whole project lifecycle and delivery model. So rather than design, bid, build, we have a much more integrated approach. I think over the last couple of years now, we've demonstrated in terms of our collaboration with the contracting market, our collaboration with design houses, and I think now after working on this for the last almost year and a half, 2 years, we're seeing the benefits of that. But again, we are focused on delivery. We are very particular about the design and the quality of this destination. This destination needs to set these standards in terms of how you see hospitality for the future. And rightly, as you mentioned, this is a key component of the 2030 vision in KSA.
Thanks, Faisal. I was interested in your a comment right at the start of your comments there. You said, you know, the UAE is a more mature market, and I just wonder if that's actually an advantage or a hindrance. So one of the things we hear about is, you know, the need for culture change in the way projects are delivered and contractual relationships. So in some ways, more mature also means more sort of established or embedded behaviours. And so you actually perhaps have an opportunity to start with not a blank, obviously not a blank sheet of paper, but does that give you, because you're working on this kind of completely new type of project in a completely new area with a completely new client model, that means you can set it up as you want to?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It does. It does. It does allow us to actually kind of rethink how we deliver, and then actually it gives us an opportunity to actually make sure that the contractors also understand how we want to deliver. I think you're right in saying maturity kind of goes both ways. So you might be matured in terms of how you deliver and what your supply chain is and how you provide logistics, but you might be also very set in the way you do things, right? So it kind of goes both ways. But I think here in this market, we've taken up the opportunities in terms of looking at contractors who traditionally have the ability to deliver, but essentially don't have the framework of how they want to deliver. And I think we've come in, work with them collaboratively, and help them ensure that this delivery goes to exactly how we want to deliver things. So I think you're right. But again, you know, you see the benefits of having UAE as a mature market as well in terms of supply chain, in terms of logistics. I mean, our partnership with Amana Dubox, I think, has been very successful. They have been a great partner for us. They have delivered for us, and they are delivering for us over the last year now. They've actually set up a manufacturing facility not too far from our project site. So again, you know, Amana could do that because Amana is mature enough. They have their supply chain established. But then some other contractors, they are open to working with us because, let's say, they are not as mature as some others in the UAE. And so that has helped as well.
So what you just mentioned Amala Dubox there. So what I may have the detail wrong, but what you're talking about there is kind of modular construction practices where things can be fabricated off-site in advance. Which, I mean, that is a huge trend, isn't it? An important trend for the future of construction. But what, in terms of contractual relationships and the way, you know, the designers and the contractors and the clients are set up, how does that modular approach require you to change those relationships? Right. So I think, you know, when we talk about modular, you know, it was important for us. You know, speed of delivery was important for us because certain projects needed to deliver early on. But the design elements were very important for us as well. So we deliver quality and deliver the design aspirations. We wanted to make sure that our design teams, wherever they're sitting in the world, with our modular construction teams, are working on a single platform. So I think one thing which was really key and has been really successful is using platforms such as BIM 360 and having a collaborative ecosystem where you design, where you look at constructability. We have really taken advantage of this platform in how we design and essentially construct and deliver these projects. We have over 200 designers in-house. I mean, you know, we have a large team in-house working with design teams around the world. And I think using certain collaborative platforms has really helped. And then on top of that, you know, incentivization in terms of how we set up our contracts and how we deliver and how contractors and design teams you know, deliver on their milestones. I think that's really helped as well. So I think that open dialogue early on, setting up contracts in a way where there's a collaborative environment between the contractors, ourselves as an employer, and the design teams from very early on. And that was really our basis of how we want to deliver things. Like I said earlier in my notes, that otherwise the schedules that we are delivering at are going to be very challenging. So we had to rethink that. And I think using technology, using collaborative platforms has been extremely, extremely beneficial. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Faisal, for that. And if anyone has questions for Faisal about his comments on, you know, the modular construction or collaborative contracting, or indeed about the Red Sea project, please send them in using the Stage tab on the right-hand side. Sean Mchugh from ALEC, if I can come to you for a sort of contractor's view of this conversation. I mean, what you're hearing just now must be manna from heaven. You know, you're hearing about two enlightened clients talking about early stage involvement for contractors in the design process, off-site prefabrication. I mean, is this what you want as a contractor? The market has been tough for you. I don't mean ALEC, I mean contractors generally. Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, good morning to everybody. Definitely, I think, you know, that's something that has been missing for a long time, is actually that kind of early engagement. And we've always felt as contractors that we do have a lot of value to add, you know, in that respect. And, you know, we do end up being, you know, a major stakeholder in these projects when they kick off. So it's always, we've always questioned, you know, the lack of interface in the early doors, because we do believe that we can actually bring a lot of value. But obviously, you know, I guess from a client's perspective, what's happening there is you sort of compromising competition, which is kind of the tradition in the market, you know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, things have become quite tough of late, and obviously as contractors, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys that we are right at the sharp end of all of this. So, I mean, you know, the economy's slowed, sentiment is pretty low at the moment, so we're seeing a lot fewer tenders, you know, there's less investment. And then there's some of the sort of spin-off behaviors around that, so kind of default on payment. You know, we've seen quite a few big players disappearing from the market, and of course the cascading effect of that, the supply chain that goes with it, and then unfortunately, you know, the individuals and the families that are affected. So it has been pretty desperate, and then also what we have been seeing a little bit more of is, you know, some clients or developers that perhaps see this as an opportunity to take some advantage. So some of the tenders that are coming out, we're starting to see some quite difficult terms and conditions being pushed down, you know, even worse payment terms than we were seeing before in terms of timing, which, you know, make things pretty challenging when contractors and the supply chain are already struggling for cash, you know, signing up to new projects in this day and age.
Can I just come in on that point, actually? I'm curious to know what type of, if we can sort of separate the types of clients. So, you know, obviously we have Aldar and Red Sea Development Company talking at the moment, and those are big clients who have repeat projects and a strategic approach. The ones that you're just talking about, where you're getting more aggressive and less attractive contracts being tendered, do they tend to come from the kind of one-off clients who perhaps just want the lowest price that they can get? Or
yeah, yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, is there you know, are we seeing a sort of different behaviors from different types of organization?
I think you're right. I think from most of the bigger, more mature clients, we're definitely seeing recognition that there's issues that need to be overcome, and people trying to explore better ways of doing things. So yeah, probably more the one-off developers and maybe sort of mid-tier clients and developers that you see more of that coming from. So yeah, but I think we talk about this more and more nowadays, and it's encouraging to see the amount of discussion that goes on around trying to find better ways of doing things. I would sort of caution against sort of getting too far ahead of ourselves. I think we kind of got to walk before we run, and sort of ask ourselves, what's the real reason around the issues we're facing? And you know, we've had very successful projects under sort of traditional contractual frameworks, and we've had failures where we've tried to do an alternative contractual framework. And a lot of the issues sit within, you know, behaviors. And, you know, people, whatever your contractual framework is, I think it's got to say the right sort of things. And I think people need to, and organizations need to, take responsibility and do what's required under those things. You know, often collaboration is just a mindset. It's not necessarily the words written down in a contract, you know, which I think is quite important. And I think a couple of tweaks go a long way. So, I mean, key things like having, responsibility in the right places, risk apportionment, making sure that the right behaviors are incentivized. And I think, we could go a long, long way. I mean, even design and build. So our experience is design and build is a great delivery model, but we can't seem to kind of get there. We just don't see enough of it. And I mean, that's a small step, there's been talk around the construction management there by Faisal. I think that's a great model. I think that's got legs. And I think Raymond was, he was saying there's many ways to collaborate, right? There's all kinds of different ways. And I think that's what we sort of need to explore, some of the softer issues around the contract and making sure, great to talk about these sort of alternate frameworks, but how do we make sure that we get the right behaviors from all the stakeholders within the ones we have,
It was very interesting just now, Sean, when you said it's about mindset. All three of the other panelists nodded exactly and said that you clearly there is a consensus that it's not just about the contract, it's also about the attitude and the mindset. And Raymond, in his comments, he talked about trust. He mentioned it several times. And I think Faisal and you both used that word as well. So that's good. So what does that tell us? If that's the bit that's missing, the lack of trust, or that comes down to mindset. I mean, where does that lack of trust come from, or how do we create it? Is it the contractors who are too adversarial in their, variation claims, or is it the clients who are setting up unfair contracts? How, in your opinion, as a contractor, Sean, what can we do to sort of create trust?
I think, trust is like it is in life, you know what I mean? It doesn't exist because you write it somewhere. It's earned, it's developed over time, and you learn to trust people because of the way in which you interact with them and the way that they behave. And it comes from all sides. I mean, there are contractors in the market that don't deserve to be trusted, and there's contractors that do. And there's employers that deserve to be trusted, and there's employers that don't. And I think it's doing the right things. It's putting the project first. Quite often what we see is agendas, organizational agendas, sometimes tend to take priority over the project itself. And I think that's where things start to fall apart, and creating the right environment for everybody to operate in, and then, making sure that the continual involvement from the employer to ensure that whoever you are, you're playing your role, you're doing what you've got to do, and you're being treated fairly. That's where it's sort of, a small example, but it's kind of a killer in the market, is how long it takes to deal with variations and claims. Financially, that's a huge burden on contractors, because the work is often done and complete many, many months before you're able to agree values and get paid for those things, and the longer they left, they culminate and aggregate, and it just becomes a bigger issue to deal with. And then people are more likely to then step away and not want to get involved, where if these things can get dealt with in real time, which is what the contracts require, then you're in a much better place, because everybody understands where they are and they can just get on with their lives and focus on delivery, instead of everybody focusing on the kind of adversarial environment that tends to be created.
Okay, well, thank you, Sean. I mean, that's a fantastic setup for Paul to come in, and I'm going to bring in Paul. Paula Bosch is the managing director for the GCC for Atkins, part of the SNC Lavalin Group. And you are our host today, Paul, and you want to talk, push this concept of collaborative construction forward, contracting forward, and using alliancing models. So it follows on exactly from what Sean has just been saying. So I presume that you are in full agreement with what we've heard so far. How do we make it happen?
Thank you, Richard, and assalamu alaikum and marhaba. Good morning to everybody. I heard some really encouraging and good words coming out from our two client panelists and the contractors. The word trust was mentioned a number of times, and trust is fundamental. And I think it was Sean was saying, it's earned. It's not something that you can pick up. It needs to be earned, and we need to get there slowly. I'm a great advocate of collaborative working. I've spent, half of my 35 years career in Europe and the UK, and the other half in the Middle East, with a background of project management. Really, I've been able to work across a whole number of sectors: transport, pharma, defence, building, etc. And I've also been through all phases of a project. I've worked with clients, seconded into client organisations as a designer, looking after Dubai Metro and Riyadh Metro for the contractors, looking at how we can integrate design with construction to reduce the time and deliver a better product, and also working on as a contractor with SNC Lavalin on building a hospital, and also on the FM side. So I've covered really all of the phases of the project, and I think I have a good understanding of how the effects of one part lead directly onto the others. Basically, I want to, everybody has agreed today that that current delivery models in the GCC seem to be failing, and there's a lot of potential there to improve for all of the supply chain, whether it's the client, the contractor, the consultant, and even all the way down into the subcontractors and the material and equipment providers and delivery people. Basically, this is evidenced by builders becoming more risk averse, and as we heard, even some are even departing the region. Clients need ever improving performances to overcome the effects of endemic time and cost overruns. And basically, they need to also ensure that they get the best bang for their buck, given the decreasing funds resulting from COVID's effect on the GCC economies. So in order to get more projects out, we need to make sure that every dirham, every rial spent is much more effective. It became clearer that collaboration between project owners and their delivery supply chain is much more essential if we're to get the necessary infrastructure to be built in the future. I really want to just touch on one issue. I think that is very important to me. Basically, a collaborative working environment is one that most construction people want to work in. It provides a more pleasant and productive environment in which construction professionals can thrive and excel in their work. Sharing challenges, crafting solutions together as a team encourages innovation, cross-fertilization, continuous improvement, transfer of learnings. All of this is very important, and where you get delivery from a trusted and committed and motivated team. I mean, at the end of the day, who wants to go to work day after day, really acting as a quasi-lawyer, writing continual backside covering letters, engaging in constant stressful confrontations and arguments centered around blame? At the end of the day, as construction professionals, most of us chose this career in order to solve technical problems and build excellent infrastructure for society to improve people's lives. There's so much more to collaboration delivery over and above the aspect that I just mentioned. And really, I'd like to pick on just 3 features to touch on briefly and hopefully start a conversation around them. I mean, the 3 key features of collaboration that I see. Key feature number 1 really is making sure that in the early days, the client's advisors and the client's different parts of the organization, and even sometimes different ministries, need to work together to optimize the requirements. Working collaboratively and openly between all client departments and client advisory consultants to optimize requirements, identify the major risks that projects will face, and establish clarity and consistency on client goals goes a hell of a long way towards making sure that everything that flows downwards from there works much more efficiently. The second issue I want to touch on really is one on the design. And again, as contractors, I think, and Sean will probably vouch for, getting a good, robust and well-coordinated design solves a lot of the contractors' problems. So it's vitally important that as designers, they have early access to all of the parties that have an influence over that particular design. And those parties, in terms of the level of their influence, will vary from project to project, depending upon what the project is. And in terms of stakeholders, I'll just mention some examples. I mean, as Sean said, it's important to have, in a lot of projects, early contractor involvement, early supplier involvement, understand how the contractor wants to build, what his sequence is, what materials he's going to use, what equipment specialist he's going to use. If the designer knows all of those issues from day one, that design will already accommodate those, and the delivery of the design will be in line with the contractor's sequence that he wants to build on.
Paul, if I could ask a question on that point, because I wonder if there's a difference in that approach between the private sector and the public sector. So, my perception is that in private sector real estate projects, the client wants to get the units out sold in the market as quickly as possible to keep, to get their revenues coming in. And so therefore you get construction starting before designs have been completed. But on the public sector side, perhaps it's a bit more strategic. So is there, on that point that you just made about early involvement and completed design earlier, is there a difference between public and private sector projects?
I mean, there are some differences, but I think it really depends. I mean, I go back to what I was saying, when you start a project and working with the client, I think it's vitally important that the client's goals are understood and made and kept consistent as much as possible. Some clients, whether they're public or private, will want the project completed quickly. For example, the oil and gas market on close downs, it's vital that you get in there, finish the work and get out, because you're holding up a vitally expensive product at the end of the day. Pharma, it's very important to finish stuff quickly because you have a ticking patent, and the quicker you get stuff done, the more money you're going to make on the back of that patent before it runs out.
That's quite an interesting point, I think. So you mentioned other industries where there are wider factors than just the contract, the cheapest price or the lowest price wins. And Raymond earlier talked about sustainability factors and quality factors, and Faisal talked about protecting the environment and the high-end development on his project. So those are factors being brought in from those particular project sponsors outside just lowest price. So is that one of the key elements to changing the culture? It's having a more holistic approach.
Yes, it is. And I think, by working early with the client to understand his goals and mapping your procurement process and the sequence of your procurement, so that you optimize getting as much of the key information that you need for the design as early as possible, with the need to get best commercial value out of your supply chain, that is key. And where you are on that spectrum depends very much on the client's ultimate goals. If the client wants everything done very, very quickly and is willing to pay more for that, then that's a completely different structure to a client who actually is focused on quality and focused on wanting to get best value for his money, but has a little bit more flexibility time-wise. And also,
it's interesting to say pay more, because my understanding is that paying more means upfront, but over the whole life you pay less. Isn't that part of?
That's a very key point you touch on there, Richard. Procuring your supply chain gives you a price, but actually at the end of the day, it's your outturn cost that counts. It's not the cost of what you procured the supply chain for. And even you can take it even further. A lot of clients are very keen on a life cycle costing approach, and within PPPs and an SPV, where you have a special purpose vehicle on PPPs, where you have the consultant, the contractor, and the operator working together. It's important to get that operational information in, so that you're designing something that over the 30-year period of the concession, or however long the concession is, you're minimizing the operational cost. Now, that's a very good early example of collaborative working, a PPP, because you've got the three parties. They're all equity stakeholders in the special purpose vehicle. Their fees are based on a number of KPIs, but it involves the whole life cycle of the project over a concession. And therefore, everybody's forced to work together in a collaborative manner to look at, how do we actually maximize the benefit to the client, and in so doing to ourselves in terms of the incentivization that exists within there. So again, it's vitally important that each project is looked at on its own standing. You know, what are the client's ultimate goals and requirements? What's his business case? What are the risks that that project is going to face? And how do we actually map the procurement system and the sequence of procurement and the availability of people onto that in a way that optimizes that process with the commercial process of getting best value? And I think that's where, you know, the client's advisors working with the client at the front end make such a huge difference to the ultimate fate of the project. In my early days, you know, of working in the major projects unit in Atkins in the UK, we carried out a study on why projects fail. And it was very interesting that actually, you know, the majority of projects fail because they just haven't been set up properly in a way that reflects the client's requirements, the client's objectives, the way that the procurement was brought together. You know, the parties that are procured could have overlaps in scope. They could have deliverables that are out of tune when the designer and the contractor actually needs them. So it's really how you approach that process by working together as a team that actually gets you to a very good ultimate goal. And I'm a big advocate of that.
Okay,
if I
great.
Just move on to my...
I know that you've got some very important points that you've already made and want to make, but we've got just 10 minutes remaining on the panel, and we've got so many questions. So I'm going to go around the panelists, and I apologize, these are random because the order that the questions have come in. But Faisal, how has the Red Sea project team collaborated with consultants and contractors? So I'm just going to put these questions as they come in. So keep your questions coming, and I apologize in advance if it seems a bit random, but I want to get through as many as I can.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what we have done as a client, you know, we've taken up a lot of the responsibility back to us. How do we manage design? How do we manage construction? And how do we make sure this ecosystem between the contractors, the designers, and us as an employer works? You know, a small example for, you know, we work in an environmentally sensitive environment, right? It's a challenging environment. It's a marine environment. Every single thing we build in that environment needs to go through an extensive impact assessment. A lot of the contractors who are operating in this market, they probably do not know how to respond to those requirements. So we said, we're going to come in, step in with our team, and help these contractors go through the impact assessments, how you're going to execute the projects, which goes through different levels of approval from the authority, and then manage that process with the contractor. So rather than saying, okay, you can't respond to it, okay, you're failing on this, let's step in. So I think that stepping in from our side and that mindset that we have as an employer, as a client, that let's help the supply chain deliver, incentives are aligned. If they succeed, we will succeed. So honestly, that's been our ethos, and that's been an ethos of the whole organization from day one.
Okay, thank you very much. Raymond, I'm going to put the next question to you. Now, this may not be one that you can answer. I apologize if it's not, but the questioner is saying, I wonder if there is an allowance to integrate CapEx and OpEx phases from an asset management point of view to ensure a smooth transformation. So bringing the front end construction with the back end operations, you know, is that something that Aldar tries to do? Or, you know, I apologize if it's not a question for you, but you seem to be the right person for that one.
Well, absolutely. It is something that we do try to do. I mean, at the end of the day, most of the development that we do deliver are residential developments, and they are for sale. On the OpEx side of it, it's fundamentally important. You know, back in the days, you know, it used to be important to have a very big apartment or a very big villa, more so on the apartment side. But then on the back end side of it, from a customer's point of view, then you have a very big service charge bill, and then that then sort of be a detraction, or can be a detraction from one of its own properties. Now, as a developer, it's important for us to find the optimal size of units to take to the market to get the right price points so the customers can afford. And then also it's equally important to then make sure that the service charge level is in the right price point as well. And so for us to be able to do that, we 100% need to take the back end to the front end, integrate that into the design, to then make sure that, you know, we're looking at total cost of ownership for development and total running costs. And so it brings us back to the price point issue, where we say that it's not about getting the lowest price for a product. It's not about putting in the cheapest materials. And I'm seeing some of the questions coming in from some of the others are talking about procurement teams need to be re-incentivized and so on. What I can say is, us as a developer, for us to be sustainable, and it's not just in a green sense, it's also in a sustainable sense from a business point of view. You touched on there, Richard, that as a developer, we need to continue the pipeline to go forward. And so for us to be able to do that, there are a number of touch points, and it's a multifaceted thing. We need to have the right product, deliver in the right quality, on time. We need to have the right supply partners, and I think Faz will touch on one of those things, because us as the developer, we've got the land bank and we've got the aspiration to deliver, but without a good supply chain to allow us to do that, then it's really going to fail. So it's really need to bring in all that together. And then so where the contractor comes in and the designers comes in, still on the OPEX and the CAPEX piece, is to be able to deliver a nice competitive design for the contractors to deliver on time, but also deliver a good quality product, because there's no point, having a very quick completion, but then you can't hand over because the units have, lots of snags in it, then that gives a bad customer perception. And so we want to really circumvent it. So once you deliver on time, you deliver a quality product, then you also want to have a very good competitive service charge rate. And that really means having your product designed properly with good quality material and good installations. And so it's fundamental part of all these. It's a full circle. It's a full loop. So
you don't see yourselves as just procuring construction. You're asset owners, asset operators, and managers, as well as procurers of projects.
Absolutely. We create communities. We create home. The name of the big company is Aldar. We are home. So and we live that. We epitomize the whole thing. We are delivering homes to people and saying it has to be right, and it can't just be home for a year or for a couple of years. It has to be a home for generations, and this obviously, and this really ties into a whole thing about the sustainability, both in terms of the green side of things and looking after the environment side of it, but also in terms of sustaining the business, sustaining our shareholders, and also generational customers along the way. So this is obviously, and this is how we approach all developments.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to put the next question. There's quite a few questions have come in on the technology role. So I'm going to come to you, Sean, first, and then I'll come to Paul with the same question. But what is the role of technology? We've gone through this big data transformation or digital transformation in the whole world. Every part of our lives has been transformed over the past decade. How important is that for improving the way projects are delivered in terms of collaboration? If I come to you first, Sean, and then perhaps Paul, you've got some views on technology as well.
Very, very important. Faisal was mentioning some of the platforms that they're using on Red Sea development. I mean, BIM 360, those sorts of things. I mean, these collaboration platforms, they're so important if they're used correctly. I mean, we've been early adopters of all of these, and in past years we've really struggled to sort of, even in some cases, to get employers to sort of buy into these things. We've sort of invested in them and pushed them onto projects and provided them free of charge to employers, and then there's been sort of uptake. But today you're seeing it kind of becoming the norm. So they have made such a difference to us, and like anything, I guess, if they're used correctly, they can be very, very powerful. So, I mean, everybody needs to get in front of this, and it's moving so fast. I mean, it's crazy, the developments that are happening on a month-by-month basis. The new sort of digital tools that are coming along, and they're no longer these point solutions. We're finding more and more these things integrate so well with one another that the opportunities are endless.
It must be difficult, Sean, to as you said, there are these new technologies emerging all the time, whether it's advanced BIM or drones or artificial intelligence or whatever. But if you're as a contractor, if you're being squeezed, late payments or a lack of new projects or whatever, how can you invest it? Is it quite difficult to sort of find the investment for these things, or is it not an option? You just have to do it.
Not at all. We started out trying to worry about, will this pay for itself? ROI, those sorts of things. And the more we've looked at it, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't even think about it anymore. When a new technology comes along, a good digital tool that plugs into what we do, just get it and start using it. you know, and also they develop. So we're working with, I mean, some great startup companies out of the UK with program management tools and things like that. And, you know, if you get in early and you get on board with these guys, they work with you. And, you know, we've had so much development within that tool to kind of cater for us and what we do and how we do things, you know. These things just, they move and they progress and they develop. So, yeah, we don't even worry too much about that now, Richard. I mean, if it makes sense, we do it because it's
interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because we've heard for a few years, you know, contractors saying we can't invest in R&D because conditions are so tough. It's quite interesting to hear that basically you're saying this is not an option, this is not optional, you have to do it. So I think that, for me, that sounds like a change in sort of approach. Paul, if I can come to you, we've just got a couple of minutes. I'm not going to ask you that question about technology because we're tight on time, but there is a question here I think we'd like to ask, which is who is responsible for taking the lead in collaboration in terms of contracts? So it's the kind of, where do we start this transformation?
I think at the end, you know, there is no one person that takes the lead, but as it was mentioned, it's, you know, this is all about trust, and it's all about encouraging people and motivating them to work outside of the narrow sort of contractual silos that they sit in. You know, one of the problems we have at the moment is that you're not encouraged to identify a problem. So generally people sit on it, and it eventually comes out, and when it does come out, it's much more difficult to deal with. So what we want to do is you know, have a level of trust and a level of openness that allows people to put their hand up and say, I have a problem, and then work together with everyone else to resolve it as quickly as possible and as early as possible when that resolution is least costly. And to do that, you know, you need to, and I think it's been mentioned by a number of the panelists, you need to make sure that everybody is motivated and incentivized in terms of the client's ultimate goal. And this is where the incentivization element of collaboration comes into play, and into how that is set up. You know, everybody needs to be set up with tight and achievable targets. Those targets need to reflect the particular outturns of the project that the client is seeking, and then you'll automatically get that collaboration, and people will step out of their normal sort of contract silo that they sit in and say, well, that's not my problem, it's somebody else's. They'll identify stuff earlier, and it will work much better from that point of view. Now, going back to your question of who's responsible, you know, ultimately we need to get the thought leaders, you know, converted within the industry, converted to this type of approach. And I think, you know, by having clients like Eldar and the Red Sea development, who obviously, you know, have an interest in these type of contracts, they need to get together with like-minded people from the supply chain, and it's all about creating a culture. And you know, the more times you do this, as mentioned before by Sean, you know, it'll be baby steps. It might be EMD plus with incentivization as a first step. But the more you do that, the more confidence that is built into the system, the further you can go, and ultimately you can get to the type of all singing, all dancing, alliancing that you get in, say, Australia and Western Europe. But we're a long way off that, and we need to build that confidence and trust. And it needs to be started by, you know, convincing the thought leaders, getting like-minded people from the whole supply chain to get together and say, right, we're going to use this as a pilot project. We're going to look at the risk profile. How are we going to actually make this work in a collaborative manner?
Fantastic. Well, that brings us to really the end of our allocated time for the panel, but it's gone too quickly, and there are so many questions that we haven't been able to get to. So what we will do is we'll circulate the questions to the panelists after, so we can try and respond to people directly. There also is a group networking session, which I'll tell you about in just a moment, where we can carry on some of this conversation. But just to follow on to Paul's point, SNC-Lavalin, as part of this broadcast, is publishing today this document, and it's called New Alliances: Collaborative Contracting in the GCC Projects Market, and it provides a framework for delivering transformation in the project market in the GCC, and it follows on exactly from what we've just been talking about over the past hour, and specifically what Paul's just been mentioning in his closing remarks there. So this white paper, which is published today, you can find it and download it from the snclavalin.com website. So snclavalin.com website, and there's a tab that says Beyond Engineering. So if you go to the snclavalin.com website and click on Beyond Engineering, you can download this document, which is published today. But also, to talk about what's in this, if you now move to the group networking session that we're going to start immediately after this panel, there will be a half-an-hour discussion where the points that we've not answered can be addressed, and Paul can talk about the white paper. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see a tab that says Group Networking. That gives you a chance, everyone who's joined us today, including the panelists, to talk in an open forum. You can all see each other. It's a big group session to meet each other and talk and touch on these points. There is also another tab on the left called Speed Networking, and that allows everyone who's joining us to just randomly meet people. The computer has a sort of randomized face-to-face meeting algorithm that gives you 90 seconds with somebody random who's joined today, and you can make contact and network as if it's a face-to-face event. So both of those things will start now. I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists who've given us so much time and energy and expertise. So thank you, Raymond, thank you, Faisal, thank you, Sean, and thank you, Paul, for your 1 hour so far. Please, if you have time, join us in the group networking on the left. And thank you all to you, the viewers who've joined us and sent in these amazing questions. Also, join us in the group networking session. So that's farewell from me for this formal part of the webinar. If you go to the left-hand side, click on group networking, and we'll see you in the group discussion. See you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.